What's the difference between a video game and oh shit! What's the difference between a video game and a movie? The difference should be obvious, right? You watch a movie and you play a video game, but what if I told you many of the games we play are secretly movies? And what if I told you that many of these movie games are actually playing you? If you play video games at all, you probably know exactly what I'm getting at here. There's a lot of games where the play to watch ratio is weighted heavily towards the watch side of things. There's an ever present debate about what makes some of this media actually a game. Some say that in order for it to be a game, there must be an objective. Others argue that any player interaction at all is enough for something to be called a game. But I'm not interested in that conversation exactly. What I want to know is what makes playing a game meaningful? In the early 2000s, much of video gaming culture can be defined by two words: power fantasy. There are so many games where the whole point is to just break shit and kill shit. Upgrade trees feature different ways to break and kill more and bigger shit. Enemies and feedback were made to make you feel like you were an unstoppable inferno of bullets and blades. There are entire genres of games that are simply about letting you drive around and blow stuff up if that's what you want to do. But then again, there are just as many games released at the same time that are designed specifically to ground the player, forcing them to work around various mechanics that are actually sort of oppressive. In these games, you weren't a god, a warlord, or any kind of god of what some people might call war. Usually, you were just a guy with a job. In Stalker, you were a nobody, living in a hostile world where nothing is given to you, not even a direction. In Pathologic, you're a doctor whose task was saving a town that simply cannot be saved. In the game Thief, you're a thief, if you can believe that. Your role is not to be the master of these worlds, but to be subject to them. And it's this subjectivity, this built-in indifference, that fascinates. One can't help but wonder how you could possibly enjoy an experience designed to make you feel not like the hero with the shining sword, but a denizen, just barely struggling to get by. But then, if you look into a game's code or design in any sort of way, a lot of these games are just lies. In a sense, all games are lies, but just follow me here for a second. These games where you think you beat the oppressive odds of a world that hates you are a clever illusion stitched together by the game's developers to make you feel like you're beating something weighted heavily against you. Maybe you just barely have enough green herbs to heal just enough before you hit a major boss fight. Maybe you just happen to pick up a special item to make sneaking through a hallway just a little bit easier. Or maybe you just barely make it back into cover before taking one too many bullets. But when you take a step back from the willful fantasy you're experiencing, you make a frightening realization. That feeling, the feeling of barely making it, of rising against bitter odds to eke out a victory, are actually exactly how the game is designed to make you feel. You weren't just barely making it to the boss with enough health. Through hours and hours of playtesting, the developers knew that they needed to throw some health pickups at you so that you had a chance to win. You didn't use your own resourcefulness to grab the dowsing arrows for that dark corridor. They were displayed to you in the section just before you go to pick them up. You didn't make it back into cover just in the nick of time. You were fooled into believing that you did, with smoke and mirrors that your eyes couldn't have possibly had the chance to see. And in some sense, we all know and recognize this. It's like how we all know that the theater of WWE is just that, it's a theater. But we allow ourselves to be taken by it for the thrill. And if a game can do so artfully and within reason, we're very likely to give that game a passing grade, even though it's intentionally deceiving us. But is this meaningful? Even if it is all just a big fat phony? In a sense, it's as meaningful as you find it to be. But there exist certain games where this illusion is almost totally and completely seamless. These are games where instead of selling you a feeling, they're selling you an ecosystem. And it is these digital ecosystems that I find infinitely fascinating. Dwarf Fortress is a game that is most notorious for this design philosophy. The game contains no scripted events and makes no effort to hijack your prefrontal cortex. There's no real goal, no reason for playing other than the satisfaction of interacting with the system. And the system is incredibly complex. Depending on the parameters you set before starting the game, or maybe experience is a more accurate term, you could have 5,000 years of lore about your particular dwarf fortress, with a list of warriors, leaders, builders, and battles that happened before you even touched the keyboard. In Rain World, the player assumes the role of the helpless slugcat in an indifferent natural world, an actual natural ecosystem, full of interacting organisms that all have their own parameters for interacting with the world, just like you. One of these little guys might just as soon attack you or ignore you depending on a myriad number of factors. Are you carrying a weapon? Are you getting too close? Have you killed any of its fellow comrades? Do you have something it wants? The game Kenshi is filled with entire nations of people, all going about their daily lives, completely indifferent to you, the player, the once sacred actor. That is until you get caught stealing and end up in a slave camp. In these games, nothing is scripted. The game is not designed to make you feel anything. Anything you feel comes completely from your own interactions with the complex system of moving parts. And typically, the draw of games with actual ecosystems is that the more you learn about the game, the more you are able to push the odds in your favor. The game is not about the player, it acts independently of him. You realize in these games, your success was never once given to you. You were never even helped. You were just a guy. You were the author of your own story. And it's undeniable that there is something pure about being just a guy. That is exactly what catches the eye when considering a game like The Forever Winter. A game with a design philosophy summed up in a single image. You are not this guy. You are this guy. A nobody, a lost cause, a scavenger in a world completely indifferent to you. You are not the hero. You are just struggling to survive. The Forever Winter is created by Fundog Studios Incorporated, a team consisting of 25 game developers with AAA backgrounds set on creating games with meaning. They even specifically say they want to push beyond the typical shooter power fantasy and really make their gamers think. That mission statement alone gets me to the table. What makes me obsessed is that everything about the Forever Winter is practically bleeding with style. The characters all cut dramatic silhouettes across the dark orange fallout and are completely unmistakable. Enemies and player characters alike have this vaguely anime appearance that when realized in 3D look completely unique, intricate, and interesting. Battlefields are littered with destroyed mechs that are venerated like saints, adorned with prayers, charms, and offerings like deities. It is this imagery that is so captivating, so mesmerizing, that it fully stops you in the middle of your mission just to marvel at the splendor of it. The terrible, terrible splendor of it. And this makes it all the more regretful that all of this is just a lie. The Forever Winter is not exempt from the same rules all game developers must play by. Every design choice is a delicate balance of time, cost, and efficiency. Shortcuts might have to be taken in order to have a deliverable experience at all. And like we touched on before, all games, no matter how complex, or even how they are programmed, are effectively an illusion. After living in this ecosystem for some time, you start to notice the cracks. What are these brawlers doing here? I swore I just cleared this area. How is it that these drones always seem to drop in like the exact same locations? How do these squads always seem to sweep so close to me when they should have no idea where I am? These are the moments that make evident the artificial tension that is built into the Forever Winter. This is not a living battlefield that is indifferent to you, that operates with or without you. This is a game that is obsessed with you, and that gives you, the player, power. The game features a complex AI director system, kind of like Left 4 Dead. Depending on the conditions the player is in, their current loot value, their chosen loadout, the number of enemies they have already engaged, The game moves to counteract the player's goal to varying degrees. This can range from spawning enemies nearly on top of you to simply rolling out stronger enemies. The biggest crack of all of them has got to be the hunter-killer system. Did you score too much sick loot? Kill one too many dudes? Hunter-killers are elite units that spawn in when you're succeeding too much. They always know where you are, they always move towards you, and they will alert other units of their faction if you are in direct line of sight. Let me ask you something. Why would a game that is supposed to be emulating a cold, indifferent battlefield give me the power to reliably spawn some of the most difficult enemies? It's not even that I find them too challenging or even really that they show up in most of my raids. It just obviously cuts directly against the game's stated philosophy. You are not this guy, you are this guy. If I'm the target of a specialized hit squad, well, I'm sort of feeling like the guy. The Forever Winter constantly balances on a thin line of its own making. It wants to let players customize their guns. It wants them to have grenade launchers, deployable turrets. It wants them to have upgrades that increase the character's sprinting capacity, weapon proficiencies, a myriad of systems that you would expect in a power fantasy game. But it also wants to oppress the player and make them feel helpless. It wants to tax you for deploying to certain areas, areas that are beautiful to behold. It wants you to gather water and build fast travel drones just to deploy. It wants to give its big bad enemies like literally a million HP. That is not a joke. A lot of the large enemies are not invincible. They're just effectively invincible. However, these heavy-handed, incoherent design choices lead to exactly the kind of player behavior that they're trying to curtail. Story time. I freaking love the design and the general idea of the character, the Shaman. When I was exploring the labyrinthian tunnel system while trying to unlock new areas, the illusion simply had me. I was fascinated by the environment, the enemy reactivity, the sounds. I was there. But when I realized in order to progress, I needed so much water, I optimized my water search. In between the gripping story of mapping out the battlefield with my shaman, I was required to take breaks to grind for water with the Bagman, a character who can carry more water at a time. The Bagman runs would net me 3 water consistently if I did them quickly. In order to sustain the raids I actually care about experiencing, I gotta keep doing Bagman runs. Over and over and over. This is what I'm calling the efficiency versus immersion trap. As soon as I started optimizing my water search, I stopped marveling at the mechs. I stopped looking at the helicopters, the infantry fights. These were just obstacles to my base upgrades. The tragedy of the Forever Winter is that it builds a world, an ecosystem, so convincingly, but it crumbles through the fingers like the sand of its own battlefields as soon as it's met with the slightest degree of scrutiny. And that is when the other parts of the game, the jank that is sometimes part and parcel with early access games, which this is, somehow become more noticeable and less forgivable. Animations are half-baked and sometimes just look bad. Jumping is floaty and unreliable, crashes are numerous. Terrain and certain objects that should be walkable bring your character to a complete halt, which is, at times, a death sentence. Enemies can be seen popping in due to the proximity-based spawn system, and after 2 years in the oven, one would start to wonder how much of this design can even be changed at this point. When you add everything up, the game, while beautiful and cinematic, leaves a lot to be desired. The illusion shatters. The players leave. The war, which initially seemed like its own organism, is reduced to theater, a movie with no one to watch it. We started this video talking about movie games, games that perform for you, the player, versus games featuring player agency. And then I said something like, well, what makes playing games meaningful? And yeah, it basically boils down to, well, it kind of depends on you. But I personally find it meaningful when a game respects my agency. And I find it very immersive to be placed in a world full of interacting parts. It makes me think that you can't really design meaning at all. It makes me feel like meaning is something that can only be discovered while inside something beautifully made. The Forever Winter seems to understand this, but currently it fails to pull the wool entirely over the eyes. Sometimes it really does seem to make my little choices during a raid matter, but all too often it's just obvious that the game is emulating an ecosystem rather than just being one. And until that changes, this is probably going to be one of those titles that I just check back on periodically to read the patch notes, unfortunately. But what do you think? Do you find meaning in the Forever Winter? What drives you to play a game? Tell me in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, give me a like, give me a subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.